chat. This time we've got one guest, not two, so it becomes easier.
Yep.
We've got Fabian Klar, who is Regional Sales Manager at ERI. And we're going to talk about technology or technological future in banking. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
There we go. And if we're lucky, they'll update the timer again as well for us, but we'll see what happens. Fabian, we're going to talk about technological future in banking. What are the key drivers for innovation in the upcoming years?
Yeah.
Yes? But before that, just very quickly, who are you? Who is ERI and what does ERI do?
Okay, so, well, as you said, I'm Fabian. I'm Regional Sales Manager for ERI. ERI is a core banking system provider. So I think you could say we're a fintech company from times where fintech was not even an expression anyone used. And we made more than 400 installations on the planet, somewhere everywhere on the planet. And yeah.
All right. What brings you to Helsinki Fintech Summit?
Well, we have been here for a couple of years already. And so we said it is quite a dynamic ecosystem here. So we should be present and also give our view to how things will evolve going forward.
Core banking.
Yes.
Technology.
Yes.
We had Eric in the main stage here this morning talking about their new book, Callista's Paradox.
Yep.
Talking about legacy. I'm going to take the opportunity very quickly to say I've also got a book coming out at the end of next month called Rip Out the Core, talking about progressive modernization and core banking. Let's talk about legacy for a minute. Can banks innovate fast enough if their foundations are still decades old?
I think the first question you should ask yourself, are actually the banks the ones who are innovating? Right? Because we're on the Nordic Fintech Summit, so you see that there's quite a big ecosystem of fintechs who are actually the ones innovating. And I think personally that banks are more trying to keep up with the pace on regulatory change, on client expectation, on competition from the neobanks and new entries into the financial markets. So my answer is they can, for the time being, defend their position, but I don't think that this will last for long if they continue working on old legacy systems. And we know that roughly about 70% of the banks are working on pretty old, sometimes even mainframe-based systems. And I think if they're not innovating now, it's going to be more and more difficult for them to keep up with the pace of innovation. Because obviously, if one thing is sure, the world will never change as slow as it does today, right? Going forward, right?
Yeah. There's an expression that this time is different. And it's also often referred to when we talk about these new cycles of change and change pressure, especially towards the incumbents, wherever they might be, in this, our case, basically banks and financial institutions. We've been having this discussion for at least 20 years, that there's going to be disruption and the old legacy core is going to slow everything down, and the current banks will be doomed because they cannot move away from that old legacy. Yet here we are in 2026. Banks are still very much here. They are constantly doing new things, not maybe as fast as the fintechs, of course, but they are still kind of moving forward at a pace which allows them to remain relevant and even actually still dominate the market to a large extent. So now the latest thing that is being discussed is AI. Generative AI, agentic AI, and there was a notion that banks will become completely irrelevant. There's this famous Temenos video, for example, where somebody in the video asks, "What was a bank?" And then the AI explains that, bank was this, and then, oh, wow, that sounds very ancient. Well, anyway, I hate that video, that aside. So the question is this: does AI really change the game? Is this time really different?
Well, you asked me now about my crystal ball, right? So I would say, yes, it will change. It will not necessarily change as fast as some might think, right? So financial industry, and especially banking, is all about trust, right? People need to trust you. But you should still not forget that you see already that banks like a Revolut, right, which was not known 10 years ago, is now one of the biggest institutions in Europe. So you see that change is ongoing, right? What still shocks me somehow is that everyone knows, or on every conference I go, everyone's talking about AI, everyone is appreciating that there will be massive changes, and still we have 70% of the banks being on old legacy systems. So they have siloed data, they have sometimes rubbish data. It's not available in real time. We're still talking about batch-based processing in a lot of banks. On the other hand, we're talking about digital assets, we're talking about atomic settlement, we're talking about FIDA, we're talking about instant payment, for example, where data needs to be available basically instantly, right? And we still see that a lot of banks are struggling with keeping up with this, but they are more or less mainly doing lipstick on the pig by, let's say, putting forward some digitalization strategies and AI strategies, but they are not actually working on the foundation of their entire building, right? So the foundation is still old, it's still crap, right? To a certain extent. Everyone talks about AI as being the new thing like DLT and blockchain was 10 years ago. But, well, financial industry is not changing fast, we know that. But I think personally, if people are not appreciating the fact that after 30 years of having core banking systems that were built up and trying to integrate new fintech solutions into something which has not been built for that purpose, at one point in time, you will be too late. And you see that the neobanks, they are growing exponentially compared to the existing banks, right? So we see the Savings and Investment Union, which requires banks to also offer investment products. Well, I think here in the Nordics, it's already quite known, but there are areas in Europe, especially Southern and Eastern Europe, where investment and wealth management was not a topic at all. It will become a topic, but how do you do that if you're having a system which is 30 years old and which cannot basically cover what clients are expecting nowadays?
What are clients expecting nowadays?
Well, they're expecting that they can access their digital front end more or less at every point in time. They're expecting that payments are executed quickly, low cost, or even no cost at all, while the reality shows that for many, many institutions, this is still wishful thinking, right? And
so the fundamental premise here is banks need to modernize off their legacy because they cannot deliver on the customer expectations.
They cannot deliver on the customer expectations. They have, obviously, with the new challenger banks or neobanks, they have strong competition growing. And me personally, I'm not going on any laptop anymore. I'm doing everything from an app. I can do it instantly. I can do it 24/7. But obviously, for example, for my investments, I'm not using a traditional bank. I'm using a neo broker because the service they are offering me is significantly better than my traditional banks, which I'm still using to do my regular payments and stuff like that. But I'm not using them for anything going forward.
You mentioned lipstick. Digital lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sort of aligns to the risks potentially of just trying to overlay AI capabilities onto your legacy. Is there a danger here of banks just adopting AI and hoping that the legacy will adapt?
Yeah, first of all, I think they are simulating innovation, right? Because in the end, yes, you can do a lot of things with AI, and it will help to improve the customer experience. It will also help in certain processes. But in the end, if these AI technology solutions are not fully integrated, you will still have manual work that is required in the end on the bank side, which will not be 24/7 for sure, because, well, there are only a few banks who could do that 24/7 because they have operations all over the world. But generally speaking, I personally think they need to understand it's all about data, it's all about infrastructure. We know that we have hundreds of fintech companies growing or appearing more or less every day, right? We have specialized solution for KYC, AML, regulatory reporting, tax reporting, stuff like that. And me working, or in my past, so I worked for companies who were offering transactional reporting, tax reporting, and the biggest topic we were always discussing about are ETL layers. But ETL layers is actually something which is super outdated, because you should not be in the position where you need to extract data to ingest it into a new solution, but there should be APIs being available where this data flows instantly into the other solutions, which have absolutely their right to be there, right? But I think if you really want to unfold the power of AI solutions, you also need to have the right foundation in order to really, well, take the best out of it and give your clients the best customer experience.
From my perspective, the fact that fintechs are fast is more of a reflection of their culture than the technology. So it is really the culture of the company that defines what the technology looks like. If you change the technology and the culture remains the same, it will never work. Now, banks will never become fintechs, and and now they're facing the challenges that we have just now talked about. You need more technological kind of advancements. You need new types of ways of working as well. What is your advice to banks who need to go on this journey of modernization? How would you approach this from a bank's perspective?
Well, I think first of all, the most important thing is that they understand that they need to do something about the core, right? It is not an easy exercise. You will not get any celebration around it if you change your core system. Actually, it is quite a risky thing, because you need to migrate legacy data, right? It is a little bit unfair to say it's only because the mindset is different. Also, the situation is a very different one, right? The fintechs usually start from a white piece of paper, right? They can actually build on new technology stack, and they don't have to worry about migrating 30 years data into the new solution, right? But in the end, we're talking about FIDA, where there's a lot of resistance from the banking industry coming from. On one side, obviously, because they don't want to lose their advantage of being a trusted counterparty and having experience in this area, but also really technologically wise, they do not have the capabilities. I mean, we saw with PSD2, yes, data needs to be transferred instantly between the different players. But now when we're talking about FIDA, we're talking about open finance, we're talking about basically every area of it, right? So you cannot plug into a middleware which basically extracts the data, but you really need to go back to the core and to have data centralized somewhere in real time. Because obviously, if you need to make it available within seconds to, competitors or collaborators, right? You need to also have that data available instantly. Now, in Europe, we're talking about T+1, right? T+1 settlement. Yes, it means theoretically you can have an overnight processing, but if there is exception management around it that you need to perform, or an overnight processing will not be sufficient, right? It needs to be instant, and if you don't have the data available, if it's not in the right quality, and if you basically have it fragmented around various different systems, which is somehow also logical, because 30 years ago, no one was thinking about basically all the requirements that banks have to fulfill nowadays, not from a regulatory perspective, but also not from the customer expectations. 30 years ago, nearly no one had internet access at all, right? So you were calling up your private banker if you wanted him to buy a security or to shift whatever your investments are, because you simply didn't have the technical possibilities. And technology is evolving so fast that even just by the evolution of technology, it will actually speed up the process where banks need to adapt to basically what is required nowadays.
We've got 1 minute left, and I want to circle back just very quickly to your core banking provider.
Yeah.
So there is a growth of core banking providers, and that whole space is getting very saturated. What's your unique value proposition?
Well, first of all, we're a little bit on the same side than the banks. We say we have 35 years of experience. But in contrary to banks, we invested heavily on our solution becoming more and more, let's say, instant, right? We have hundreds of APIs available. We have real time. We have one database and so on, because we invested more than €1 billion in our solution. Olympic, or the system, originally comes from the private banking area, right? So we are very used to do basically everything a bank needs to do, right? From securities custody, automated processes around corporate action, and so on. And we heavily worked on making it really a service-oriented architecture, right? So our solution can really communicate in real time with the entire ecosystem a bank needs nowadays. And we don't have that problem with legacy technology because we realized it early enough to basically change it. So we, on one side, have the experience from 35 years plus being in the banking industry. And on the other side, we're innovating our solution constantly. So I think we're taking, well, somehow the best of both worlds in one.
Wonderful. And with that, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks.
Right, wonderful. We are going to move on to a keynote presentation.
We should also note that this brings our recording.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, as we said, this has been a recording of a live recording. It's going to end up being our next podcast episode. This is the end of that, and we move on to the sort of next part. We're not going away. We're hosting this stage for all morning, but we're shifting gears a little bit.
So we will say goodbye to the listeners online and see you next time.